Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk you through a very practical way that you can get closer to your dreams by really figuring out what the conditions are that you need to create in order to start to achieve your dream. And a lot of the time we get stuck with this because we have big dreams and they feel like they're very far away, or they feel like they're very elusive, or we have no idea how we're going to turn that dream into a reality. And the first thing I'll start by saying is that your dream is probably going to start as a seed. And when you understand that your dream is a seed, the seed of an idea, the seed of an experience, the seed of a creation, what will happen then is you'll start to get into the mindset of nurturing your seed. And nurturing means something you're going to be doing to facilitate the growth and the expansion of that seed. So, the first thing we want to do is figure out what the seed actually is. It helps if the seed is a physical, livable reality that's also realistic. So you might have a dream, for example, writing a book, or you might have a dream of creating a movie, creating your own film. You might have a dream of taking on a particular role, or perhaps it's a career role. You might have a dream of experiencing something, maybe a dream of having a happy relationship and a loving relationship. So you need to really get clear, first of all, on what your dream is and why it's important to you, the impact it's going to have on your life, and therefore naming what your seed is. When you've figured that out, you can just write it in here. So let's take the example of, say your example is, I want to make a movie. My dream is to write and produce my own movie. Let's now look at what the thoughts are, the actions, the internal environmental conditions and the external environmental conditions that are going to be required in order for you to start creating your dream. So you've planted the seed, and the seed now has conditions. The seed needs to be nurtured and held in the right conditions in order for it to grow into this movie. The first thing we're going to focus on is the thoughts. You will know, based on your experience, at least what doesn't work. So sitting there all day and thinking, I'm never going to make this movie, I'm never going to be able to write this film, that's probably not going to be conducive towards you making any progress or taking any action. So what you want to do is you want to reflect on past experience, and you want to open up your mind to experiment with different ideas, and you want to say, okay, what are the 3 things that if I start to think every day will help me to create the right mental condition for me to be able to nurture my seed? Well, maybe you want to say, the first thought I want to have in my mind throughout the morning is, I can be creative today. So I can create. You want to tell yourself that every morning. It's a thought. You want to have in your mind this going round and round. I can create. I can create. It starts to open up a dimension of possibility for you. Then you might decide that you want to have another thought that you want to place your mind and your mental focus on. It might be related to anything to do with your movie production and your movie writing. So I am focused. Great. So now you're creative and you're focused, and you just think that. You allow that to go round and round in your head. I'm focused today. And it doesn't matter if you're doing something that maybe isn't requiring much focus, but if you have that as a preliminary thought, something that you anchor into your own mind, your neurological networks are going to respond to that itself. So telling yourself that you're creative and that you can create and that you're focused is going to really help you. And it's especially going to help you if you are one of those people that find yourself in a kind of a self-sabotaging mental loop where you want to create something, but all you end up saying to yourself is that you're not creative and you don't have any focus. This one is for you. Third thought, you might want to say to yourself and think to yourself, I am excited, perhaps. You want to write an exciting movie that people want to watch, then it helps if you're an exciting person, an exciting-minded person. So can you get excited about your own ideas? Can you get excited about your own movie? When you start to tell yourself this, I am excited, you start to think that, a lot of the time your anxiety that relates to this movie and this process of creating, a lot of the time we can actually confuse anxiety and excitement. So we think that we're feeling anxious because we're worrying, but actually what we're tapping on the door of is excitement and potential. So allowing yourself to tap into your excitement before you start to tap into your anxiety is really going to help you to stay in a creative, focused and excited place. This is going to help you to get into the right energy space that allows you to start openly experimenting and creating your movie. So these are thoughts, anchoring them in. The next thing you want to do is to think about, okay, what action do I need to take every day? So let's add that. Think about this. If this really is your dream, this movie really is your absolute dream, then every single day you want to be working towards your dream, even if it's for 15 minutes every day. If you can do something consistently every single day that relates to your dream and your dream relates to your sense of purpose in this world, you will feel more connected to yourself, rather than you spend 12 hours of the day either working for someone else's dream or putting energy into your immediate tasks and immediate gratification without actually thinking about what you need to do for your longer term fulfillment, and allowing yourself to put in a little bit of energy each day and focus and attention on that. So everyday action. Think about what you need to do every day in order to get this movie written or produced. You will know best based on what the seed is. You will know what's required, right? Whether you're setting up a business or whether you are writing a book or whether you are writing a movie, whether you are building a house, you are going to know what actions you need to take. And if you don't know what actions you need to take, what I would recommend you doing is starting a list. So you open a piece of paper and you make a list of everything and anything that you deem you will need to do. Every single thing that comes to mind. I'm talking about even the smallest details. Everything. You write it all down on a piece of paper. It's not going to be in any particular order. It's just going to be a brain dump. So this is your brain dump. You've got to be willing to brain dump. Then you've got to be willing to look at where the gaps are. And you've got to be willing to research. If you don't know what is required to build a house or to produce a movie, you're going to have to find out somehow. Otherwise, you will not be able to take focused, creative action, and then you will stop getting excited about it because it will start to feel like a chore. So do this practice. If you are finding that what your seed is, your dream, is requiring you to take action, and you don't have a clear picture about what that looks like, do your brain dump, figure out what the gaps are, figure out where your areas of knowledge are lacking, and go and do some research. Research is free. You will more than likely find the answer to the question you're looking for. Action 1. What are you going to do every single day? You might say, for me to write this movie and produce this movie, I need to do video editing. I need to video edit every day. Well, that's going to be one thing. What else do you need to do? You might say, I need to find footage. Every day I need to find footage because I can't edit if I don't have footage. And the third thing, what else do you need to do? You've got your footage, you've got your video editing. You might say, well, actually, I need to create audio. These are just examples. You can have whatever your process requires, you will know best. So you've got 3 things that you now need to do every day. Video editing, finding footage, creating audio. Now, if you have that in your mind, it's good, but it's not specific enough. And you may find yourself one morning meandering around, the day goes by, before you know it's the afternoon, you've done kind of a little bit of video editing. Yeah, you found some footage, but it wasn't great, it wasn't really what you were looking for, and you had to listen to some tracks and you found a bit of audio. Great, well, you've kind of done everything you said you were going to do, except what you haven't done here is defined how long you're going to do these things for and what it looks like when you know you've done it. So an action, how do you know you've taken that action unless you have some sort of outcome of what it looks like? So it gets more specific is my point. Video editing for how many hours each day? Or how many videos are you going to edit for you to say, okay, I did video editing today. You might say, I'm going to video edit for 4 hours. Whether you measure by time or by a different metric, you figure out what the metric is for your project. Find footage. Okay, how long are you going to spend doing that? You might say 2 hours. And then create audio, you might say, I'm going to do that for 1 hour. And these are my minimum. It's the minimum amount of time and effort I'm going to spend doing these things. Great, now we're getting a bit more specific. When you start to examine the number of hours you're putting each day, or the amount of energy you're spending each day, and you start to compare that to what your result is and what your output is, then you'll start to be able to plan when this big dream of producing this movie is going to be able to materialize. You might do this for a week and then track it, and that's a good idea. So you take action, focused action every week, and then you say, okay, at the end of 1 week, I put in a total of 30 hours, or let's say 20 hours. I put in a total of 20 hours, and the outcome was I produced an intro to my movie, a rough first draft intro. Great, so you put 20 hours in and you've produced, say, an introduction, first few scenes. You will know then that you have X many more scenes to go, and now you can start planning whether you need to up the time to shorten the duration of your project, or whether you need to perhaps reduce the amount of time, because you can actually get this project done much quicker. So what you want to do is you want to constantly be looking and planning and saying, okay, I know I can do an intro in 20 hours, and I know I've got however many more sections of this movie to write and produce, and therefore this is going to take me in total, say, 1,000 hours, and 1,000 divided by 20 will give you the timeline. So you can say this movie will be produced in X many months. When you have a target and a focus, it helps you with your focus. It helps you to get clarity on what you're creating, and then you can let yourself get excited. What do you need to do when it comes to your external environment? The external environment is very important. If you're sitting down for 20 hours a day, producing and writing and editing, creating audio, 20 hours every week, you might want to consider the environment that you're doing it in. Bear in mind this is something you're going to put in 1,000 hours into. For example, you might say, I know that my external environment, such as my desk, is messy and my chair is very uncomfortable. So part of optimizing my external environment is going to require me to clean my desk and get a new chair. So you might say here, clean desk to supportive chair, so you can have the right posture to do your work with. You might also say, I know that in my external environment, it can get very noisy and chaotic, for example, when my children come home from school. So I know in order for me to produce my video, I need to do this when the house is quiet. You might say, quiet. Then you immediately know where these 20 hours a week need to be spent. They probably need to be spent while during the day when your children are at home, rather than you trying to sit down and fit in video editing and producing during the evening, perhaps when the whole house is buzzing and you don't actually get that quiet creativity time. So you're going to figure out then, by doing this external environment action plan, when you actually need to be taking these actions. Another thing you might decide is your external environment needs to be inspiring in some way, or it needs to be thought provocative. So how are you going to ensure that your external environment is supporting your creativity? That's an interesting one. You might want to figure out some inspiring or exciting things you can expose yourself to, like other people's movies, other people's creative ideas. You might want to consider the people that you're around. If you want to be creative, focused and excited, and you are exposing yourself to an environment where people are not creative, what's the opposite of not creative? Uncreative. Not focused, unfocused, and they're really bored, the people that you surround yourself with are going to rub off on you. And that so will their attitudes and their energy. So you want to really consider who are the people that you are around and their frequency, and is it supportive to be around these people while you're trying to cultivate these conditions and these actions in order to get you to your dream. So consider it. We can't always change the people around us, but a lot of the time we can consider how many hours a week we're spending in particular external environments. Finally, internal environment. This is really important because a lot of this capability to be creative, focused, excited, etc., to take action, depends on really how we feel about ourselves inside. So this is what I mean by internal environment. I want you to consider 3 things that you need to cultivate within yourself in order to facilitate the type of internal environment that's going to lead to the right conditions and the right actions to start to be taken. For example, you might say, my first thing is I know I need to be grounded, because when I'm not grounded, my thoughts go absolutely crazy and I think the worst things of myself. I start to freak out, I start to get panicked, and it's very hard for me to focus. So grounding and being grounded. Then you might say, another part of my internal environment is that I need to feel calm within myself. Well, you can say, well, actually grounding helps me to feel calm. Another thing that you might say about your internal environment is you might find that actually you work best when you're well fed and nourished and watered. Or you might say, I actually work best when I'm fasting. So you're going to know what your body is asking for. Figure out what your physiological condition needs to be. Your physiological environment, particularly your gut and your brain, will really be important for you to cultivate the right type of internal environment that lets you get what you need to get done in the way you need to do it. So think about things to do with your physiological internal environment and what needs to be done there for you to be in the right space within yourself. Finally, a lot of the things that people realize they need in their internal environment are things that are perhaps more emotionally orientated and softer, things like self-compassion and self-love. So let's write that, because that's really, really important. It's very difficult to do all of these things if you don't hold a condition within yourself of self-love. Because this journey towards your dream, it will get tough at times, and it's self-love and it's compassion that's going to help you to become more resilient. So let's now think, okay, grounding, you know that you need your internal environment needs to be grounded. So what are you going to do? How are you going to ensure that? So you're going to ground every morning. So just say in the AM, you're going to ground in the AM. And physiologically, gut-brain axis, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to facilitate this internal environment? Well, you're going to make sure that actually you don't drink coffee in the morning because it makes you really jittery and nervous. You drink something that's better for your brain. And you can decide whatever that looks like. Or it might not be coffee, it might be another example. Start to consider exercise, for example. You might say, well, actually, physiological environment, I really need to move my body every day and I need to work out in the gym. So you might say, well, that's something, that's one of my internal environment, and it also links to your actions, right? So your internal environment, you know, you need to have physical mobility, you need to have a strong gut-brain connection. So there's certain things that you're going to find will be granted when you access certain levels of activity. So here you've got meditation, you've got gym, or going for a run perhaps, and then self-love and compassion. So what are you going to do in order to facilitate a compassionate internal environment? What makes you feel compassionate with yourself? You might say a walk in nature really helps me to calm down, really helps me to feel more connected with myself, more forgiving of myself. You might say you've got particular meditation practice that helps you to cultivate this internal environment. So here we have a very, very easy and simple way for you to decide on a plan. And this is a daily plan. This is going to be part of your daily life. The thoughts that you think will also support the actions that you take. This is a constant feedback. The actions that you take will start to feed in to the thoughts that you have. A lot of the time, we get stuck here, thinking and doing nothing. Then it becomes very difficult to do anything and take any action because we are stuck in our own heads and we haven't moved. And then we start to cultivate an internal environment that is not self-compassionate, that is not grounded, and that actually starts to be self-punishing. When we do that, we don't often look after ourselves in our external environment in the way that we need to. So what we need to do really is start to understand how thoughts, actions, internal environment, external environment are all playing into each other and how they reinforce each other. So if your desk is not clean and you don't have a supportive chair and you haven't fixed your external environment and it's noisy and it's chaotic, or your flatmates are coming home at the same time cooking dinner, we're in the same place that you're trying to edit footage and be creative, you might actually find that that is not supportive of your action. You can't take the actions you need to take every day for the hours you need to take them in order to achieve, because your external environment is failing you. So this is a very easy plan that you can actually draw up yourself and keep refining, because these things are going to change. So as you do this, you're going to find, if you study this within yourself for say 1 month, you do this practice and you track your hours, your output, how many hours, what your output was. So let's say track your input, and these are your inputs: thoughts, actions, external environment, and you track your output, which is what are you actually producing. If you're doing all of this and you're like, I'm really aligning my thoughts, I'm thinking all the right things in the morning, it's leading to some really great internal environment within myself, I'm feeling great, feeling really, really aligned and focused and grounded, and I'm doing all the things I said I would do. I'm showing up, I'm editing footage for 4 hours a day, I'm managing to do this while I have a clean desk, supportive chair, I'm around the right type of people, but I don't know why, I don't know what I'm producing. So you're doing everything right, you've got the process, but you haven't measured the output. So you're like, well, I don't really know what I did for that month. I seem to have done everything right. This is where a lot of people fall, and they forget to track progress and output. And when you're planting seeds, it's really important to keep tracking the tiny little seeds and the tiny little growth that you see. It will be perhaps slow at first. When you plant an actual seed and the plant starts to grow, you celebrate every single tiny sprout. You celebrate every leaf. You're enamored and excited, and you nurture that. So if you're not doing that for yourself because your only output metric is this huge goal, 1,000-hour movie, as in 1,000 hours of effort to produce the movie, if the only output goal that you have is this big dream, then you're forgetting to create progress benchmarks. So you want to be measuring progress. It's like a train. Measure the train of progress as it moves, and figure out what your milestones are. These are going to relate to your output. So progress and milestones. You might say, I don't know, I have no idea what the milestones are. As you start to do this process, you will start to figure out what the milestones are for your big dream. And the brain dump over here is going to help you with that, because you're going to have so much listed on here. It's going to become very clear the steps that need to be taken, what needs to be done, and then based on these steps, what does the milestone look like? So as you track your input and you say, okay, how well am I doing this week, every month, you also want to say, how well does it relate to my output? Otherwise, you fall into the trap of, I'm doing everything right, but I can't actually link it to what's being produced. I can't link it to knowing whether I'm any closer to my dream or not. So when you start to live like this, you can very quickly figure out where you need to optimize your life, i.e., where you're noticing the thoughts are needing to be revamped or renewed. For example, you might be doing this process, but you might say, you know what, I'm just not excited. I'm in the flow, I'm in the process, but I'm just noticing I'm not waking up every day excited about what I'm creating. So then you want to figure out, how can you optimize this thought? How can you get to a place? If this is really important for you to be able to feel excited, it might not be, but if it is, you need to start to now find ways to cultivate excitement in your internal environment, right? And you need to figure out what that looks like. You might also say maybe you need to take some action in order for you to get excited, and you will know what that action is. So you might say, instead of creating audio, I actually need to get inspired and start watching other people's stuff. That gets me really excited. Or I need to read about people's journeys as they've gone through this process of movie making. That is what's going to get me excited. Then you start to update your actions. So you're optimizing all the time. You're optimizing every time you get information and feedback about what you need to optimize. And you might get that every month when you sit down and do a review. You might get that in the moment. What I would advise you to do is keep a little track. You don't have to keep a big journal about it, but if you keep track of the tiny things that you're noticing that need to be optimized, it becomes very easy to do it. If you've been doing this process for 7 months, 8 months, you haven't got any output, but you've got committed to, or you haven't really figured out what milestones you've achieved, but you've got committed to this notion of just doing a process, you will find yourself less willing to optimize. Because you've been in the process, but you've not been looking at where the process needs improving and how it relates to your output. So you're just doing something, right? You need to have this whole chain and this whole flow and set up, and be willing to revisit at regular intervals to assess honestly and to be radically honest with yourself, and to assess whether it's working for you or whether actually something is not quite working for you in this. And if you do this and you do go through this exercise, I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear how it feels to be on this journey of planting your seed to create your dream.